Good morning. Great to be with you again. Thank you so much for taking us along wherever you are, whatever you're doing on this Saturday morning or whatever day of the week it might be. If we're in your ears in the podcast while you're, mowing the lawn, driving to visit the kids, whatever. Glad to have you on board. One of the things that this program enables me to do is spend several hours a week taking a look at health and wellness information. And there is a growing trend I'm seeing, and that is more education to health professionals about the need to screen patients for pre-diabetes. This is a giant problem that is coming at us like a freight train, and a lot of people don't even know they're on the road to type 2 diabetes. So that's going to be our focus today. I've invited Greg Russell, pharmacist and founder of Fort Wayne Custom RX, to help us understand some of the factors that go into pre-diabetes and also how vitamins, minerals, and some plant-based compounds can help your body adjust to all of that. It is a big problem, Greg.
It's a huge problem, and it has been on the radar of health professionals for a while, but we just can't seem to get any momentum and get over it. And here we are in September, and we know we're just finished up summer. Kids are back in school, and guess what's around the corner, right? The holidays, right? And that's a danger season for most of us because studies show that most of us put on 5 to 10 pounds over that course, and then we spend the rest of the year trying to get that weight off. So instead of delving into this in November, which is National Diabetes Month, we thought, hey, let's talk about it in September so we can start thinking about a plan. How are we going to handle the holidays?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that you have to keep in mind here is there are 5 different factors that doctors use to determine whether somebody has this pre-diabetes, or they call it metabolic syndrome. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on that, but we'll walk through them real fast. First one, the easiest one really, is your waist size, your circumference. If you're more than 40 inches for men or 35 inches for women, okay, that's one of those trigger warnings. And then blood pressure, Greg, what's the other one?
Yeah. So, we talk about that obesity. By the way, that's not around our little waist. That's the widest part.
Right.
Right? The biggest part of our bellies that we're going to measure, because we all have a 32-inch belt, but carry 40 inches around our bellies. But blood pressure, definitely, perfect is 120 over 80, but we get into what we call hypertension at 130 over 85. So that's one stage of hypertension. So that's the second factor.
Triglycerides, the amount of fat that's circulating in your blood, if it's over 150, that's the danger sign. Mm-hmm. And then blood sugar. What's the blood sugar level we need to watch for?
So the blood sugar level, and we're going to spend a lot of our time talking about that today, is, we really want to be under 100. When we started in that, getting over that 100, we're starting to move into pre-diabetes. And of course, the diagnosis for diabetes is 126, but you're on your way when you get close to 100.
So how would you know? Well, there are a lot of places you can go these days and have these tests done. You don't have to go to your doctor and get that done anymore. And you can go to any lab test now. Lots of labs in town, but this one is just kind of convenient. And you can order what's called a metabolic panel and the cholesterol screen. They're $49 each, so $100. But that gives you the data that you need to know, hey, where am I on all these things? And Greg, you're willing to help people out once they get that data. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so we're happy to sit down and look at those numbers. Of course, we always recommend you share those numbers with your physician, but we'll talk to you about kind of some plans that we've used, or some different whether they're plant-based medications and herbs, or whether we talk about fiber supplements or whatever. We'll talk about some just general things that you can do to really try to reverse the course and try to get some of those numbers under control.
So you get that data in your hands, you understand what those 5 metrics are, and you have that blood sugar, triglyceride, and other information, and Greg will schedule time with you at no cost, right? No cost consultation.
Yeah, as long as they call and make an appointment with us. That's
Excellent.
Great.
Okay, great. So fiber, you just mentioned fiber, and before the program here, you told me something interesting about your own personal life and experience with fiber. Let's share that.
Yeah, so I look back at myself and I look at the scale of how my weight's gone up and down, and I've realized that although, it kind of becomes, most people would like to have the eggs and bacon breakfast, or the oatmeal. I find that you got to keep it as simple as possible for people, and I tend to really promote a lot of the meal replacements. And we have several really good companies that make products. One, for example, is Mediclear or MediPro, made by Thorne. There's Glycemicor from Orthomolecular. But these are basically fiber-based, protein-type shakes that we use, and I've replaced my breakfast with that. And again, I'm trying to maintain that fiber. Fiber is really, really important because fiber helps slow both the absorption of cholesterol and blood sugars. And so, trying to keep your energy levels throughout the day. And the other thing I find is it's quite filling. It really holds me most of the morning when I do it.
So your personal experience has been when you went off the breakfast shake.
When I went off the breakfast shake, the weight comes back on. Now, I know in the perfect world, you should be able to try to eat a plant-based diet, but the reality is, for me at least, it becomes very difficult to do.
Yeah, and it's interesting. There are different types of fiber, and you can eat all the plant fiber that you want, but some people have real kind of intestinal distress when they add a bunch of fiber to the diet.
Yeah.
So there's a product called Guar Gum. It is plant-based, but it's different. How's that so?
Right. It's just we find that it just seems to be less. It causes less constipation, bloating, and diarrhea and that type of thing. And the things you always have to worry about with fiber. If I had a total meat eater who came on the air or came to my store and I was sitting to advise them, I would say, hey, we want you to start eating plants, but you need to kind of start a little slow because your body's not used to it. And that's where fiber is a great place for probiotics to live. Those good bacteria. So if you're not eating fiber and you start eating a lot of it, you are going to have some GI distress, being gas, bloating, diarrhea.
And Guar Gum is used in a lot of different products. It's a thickening agent.
It is a thickening agent.
So if I see you and want to add some of that to my diet, is that a chewy, a gummy? Is it?
I tend to see it in a lot of the protein drinks. Fiber Mend is one made by Thorne. That's a nice product. Again, and I had a lady just in a couple days ago that said, hey, I was talking to her about fibers, telling her, what I recommend for people who have high cholesterol and diabetes. The first thing I tell them to do is try to get their fiber intake up to 35 grams a day. I have a fiber sheet that I hand out. And she says, I just don't eat fruits and vegetables. They bother me. She says, let me have a fiber supplement. So we picked a fiber supplement out for her to start with. And some people just need to do that. And
it's different than Metamucil product because that's a psyllium-based product,
It is a psyllium-based product. And psyllium is probably the worst when it comes to the bloating and some of the GI issues. It will work, and some people do fine with it.
Right. But Guar Gum is something to think about if you're trying to add some fiber to your diet.
Right.
Vitamins, minerals, and some other compounds are very important to talk about, and we're going to do that as we continue here with Greg Russell from Fort Wayne Custom RX on the Health Co Live Radio Hour on WOWO. And we're going to talk this segment about vitamins, minerals, and plant-based compounds, all designed to help people who are headed toward diabetes and improve their metabolism. So where are we going to start?
Well, let's start with let's talk about just some basic vitamins and minerals that have been shown to be helpful with patients with diabetes. So we probably chromium and cinnamon have probably been the two of the most historically used. We know chromium and cinnamon, and there's certain types of cinnamon. We're not talking about the cinnamon sugar that you put on your toast. We're talking about the herb cinnamon. Those have been shown to help improve what we call insulin sensitivity, and so that would be allowing the blood glucose to get out of the blood and into the cell where it's supposed to work instead of sitting outside in the blood itself.
So it makes what insulin you have more effective.
That's correct. Right. Okay. Helps allow that insulin. Remember, insulin is the carrier that takes the blood glucose out, blood glucose being the sugar, into the cells. Remember, our cells love to run on sugar. Sugar is very efficient. The problem is when we have too much sugar all the time, then insulin becomes resistant and it can't carry that. It can't carry the sugar into the cell. So the sugar stays in the bloodstream. And I always tell people, visualize glass floating around in your bloodstream. Think about what kind of damage that would happen. And that's exactly what sugar does. It crystallizes and it starts tearing things up.
Wow, that's a great visual. So little shards of glass. That's what sugar is in your blood.
Just kind of think of it that way, and that's why we start seeing problems with the nerves. We see problems with people going blind. We see eventually problems with damage to the heart and other vital organs.
Wow. Okay, that's great. That's a good visual.
Yeah.
So these chemical reactions that our body depends on, there's another key player here, and that's magnesium.
Yeah, magnesium is extremely important. Magnesium, again, is found commonly in plant foods. Magnesium is part of the chlorophyll molecule, so if you're eating a green plant food, you're getting more magnesium. But also, it's been estimated that somewhere between 50% and 2/3 of the American population is low on magnesium. We don't think about magnesium. We all talk about calcium, but we never talk about magnesium. And again, magnesium is very important because, again, it does help with our metabolic processes, the whole process of burning sugar.
Yeah, I read that there are over 30 enzymatic reactions, enzyme reactions critical to your body that are dependent on magnesium.
Yeah, there's probably about 300 biochemical reactions, actually, that magnesium plays a role in.
So we don't get enough of it. So am I taking chromium and magnesium separate? How do I get enough?
Typically, magnesium is one of those, I tell people one of those 5 critical supplements that most people need to take. But you can measure your magnesium in your blood. You can do what they call an RBC magnesium that actually measures that. But usually what I'm looking for, as patients age, they're going to need some magnesium. If their blood pressure is a little bit high, magnesium brings that down. So magnesium is really important. Most people only need a couple hundred milligrams a day of magnesium. So it's easy to get in a supplement. Again, I kind of I look at formulations that have a little bit of everything in them. So I have a product called Diabetes Balance that we've had formulated that has a little magnesium, some chromium, and cinnamon in it.
Yeah, you sent me some information on that. It also has something here I never heard of before, bitter melon extract.
Yeah, bitter melon is quite interesting. That is the whole idea. People would eat this bitter melon. It's very, I think it's from Africa, if I remember right, and it kind of curbs patients' taste, and they would notice that their blood sugars would drop. But the way it works in the liver on glycogen. It also works in the pancreas by increases insulin secretion. Remember, if we're resistant to insulin, we're making insulin, but it's not working. So this helps push a little bit more of that insulin out.
Also in this Diabetes Balance is a couple of things. You've heard of ginkgo biloba, of course, milk thistle, bilberry, and this one is very important, alpha lipoic acid. Tell me about that.
Alpha lipoic acid, again, is what we call the universal antioxidant. So if your blood sugars are running high, your body is undergoing these chemical reactions. You're going through a lot of what they call oxidative stress. And alpha lipoic acid has been used in a lot of patients with diabetes to help lower that oxidative stress, which is correlated to oxidative stress. When we see more oxidation going on, there's more damage to nerves. And so I have a lot of patients with diabetes, and one of the first signs they start experiencing is numbness in their extremities, or that burning, that prickly fingers feeling like they're asleep all the time. And that's usually we see that in their toes and in their fingers.
Right, that peripheral neuropathy. Yeah, that's a problem. So this product, Diabetes Balance, it's got all that stuff combined, so I don't really have to think about it. Is there anybody, so I take 3 capsules a day, it says. It seems like that's pretty simple to make sure I'm getting all the nutrition I need.
Yeah, it's a pretty easy product to take, and patients do fairly well with it. Another one that I just really love is berberine. I can't say enough about berberine. Berberine both lowers cholesterol and lowers blood sugar. This product does not have berberine in it, so sometimes I'll give people berberine also. We have to be careful if somebody's on berberine and they're on cyclosporin, an immunosuppressant drug, but most people can take it.
Again, I mentioned this each time you come to the program, but you are making these recommendations based on science and studies and not just, hey, I want to sell a product. I think that is so important for people in this unregulated supplement world, you don't know what you're getting. And that's why I personally trust you and my family to kind of guide us in all this stuff, because I know you well enough to know you're looking at the studies, you're looking at the science.
Well, I do, and you look at the need. We look at how many people. We're going to see 700 million worldwide diabetics by the year 2045. That's huge. And, this is not going away, and we need to start trying to curb it now.
So what is the symptom? So we talked about the high blood pressure and high sugar and waist size and that kind of stuff. But typically, how do I feel if I'm pre-diabetic? What are people telling you?
Great question. We learn in pharmacy school, these certain, frequency of urination and dehydration and increased thirst and stuff like that. And that's probably true for the type 1 patient. The type 2 patient may feel some of that stuff and not even really realize it, but they're going to feel fatigue. Fatigue is the number one thing. They're fatigued. I don't feel rested when I sleep, or I can't sleep well at night. That's low energy. I just don't have the strength. I can't go out. I don't feel like going and playing golf today. It's those things that we like to do.
Yeah, and that's that vicious cycle, right? I mean,
right.
You don't have the energy to do the things that you want to do that are active, and so you become less active, and it's a downward cycle.
Yeah, that's right. But we're supposed to do 30 minutes of activity every day, is really what everybody wants you to do for heart disease and diabetes and trying to control your blood pressure and your weight. But if you're exhausted, you're just not going to feel like doing that.
And moms and grandparents, here's a special notice. Pay attention to the kids and the grandkids. We've seen coming out of COVID a big jump in children.
My goodness, the thing that's really, I think John Hopkins just had a release on a study, and they just released it, and they showed that basically there was a 77% increase in the kids that developed type 2 diabetes. Now, remember, type 2 diabetes 40 years ago, when I was in pharmacy school, we didn't even talk about it in children because it was considered an adult disease. But now it's starting to become epidemic in children, and the number one factor, of course, is going to be obesity, and they link it to two factors. They link it to because kids weren't in school, they weren't being active, they weren't in sports. Okay, so getting the kids moving and back at it. And number two, and of course, my personal opinion is kids spend too much time on video games, right? And not enough time playing outside and whatnot they needed to do. And then the second thing, of course, was because they weren't at school, this at-home school learning, kids are by themselves, so they're shut in, etc. And I think that should be a real alarm, because, if they're starting to get obese now and starting to have these issues, we're just going to see this thing get pushed further and further into younger people.
How many of the problems that you see in the pharmacy are related to this condition?
Oh, it's vast. If you think about 1 in 3 people walking through that door already has this problem. It's and you look at people today, and you used to say, I used to be able to kind of predict. I can't quite as much anymore because it's become so endemic.
Yeah, that's a huge issue, isn't it? Wow. Well, and there's, we've talked about on the program before here, the food supply and what we find in the supermarket. We've gotten so darn good at engineering foods and the way they taste and the way they feel in your mouth and all of that stuff, that we are now addicted to food products that are really destructive.
Probably that's true.
All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you have a question about metabolic syndrome, I want to go back to the beginning again and have that test, have your that lipid panel, and have that metabolic profile, and bring those test results to the pharmacy, and what's going to happen?
Yeah, basically we're going to sit down with you. If you have your drug list, and we can get that in advance, we'll try to help screen, explain what drugs might cause nutritional deficiencies, which is certainly going to impact your health. And then secondly, we're going to try to just, try to work through the issues with you. Where can we bring you along in a baby step that you'll feel better about what you need to do? And try to educate and give you information. And really, we're not trying to, we're not here to cure you, per se, but to give you some information where you can make those vital health changes. That's going to impact the rest of your life.
That is Greg Russell. He is the founder and the pharmacist at Fort Wayne Custom RX. You'll find him at 425 East DuPont Road, right behind Casa Grill. Also online at FortWayneFWCustomRx.com. FWCustomRx.com. Thanks, buddy. Good to see you again. Yeah, you bet. Okay.